Benjamin Franklin once said, there are only two things that are certain in life, death and taxes. The only difference between the two, like Will Rogers said, that death doesn't get worse every time Congress meets. Good evening, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about this gloomy topic on death on this beautiful Thursday evening. But I do want to talk about the other inevitable thing, the taxes. Why? Because it's so close to my heart. I do taxes for a living. Nobody likes to pay taxes. But don't we enjoy using public roads, recreational parks, libraries, and we send our kids to public schools? We need law enforcement and military protection. Where do you think the money for all this is going to get funded? Most of it is going to come from the taxes that's raised by the federal, state, and local authorities. It's okay to pay taxes, but don't you wish the laws were not so complicated? It's good for me, because the more complicated the tax laws are, it's a good job security for me. There are distinctly two classes of people that complain about taxes, men and women. Do you know that even Albert Einstein, he said that the most difficult thing to understand in this world is income taxes. He had a very difficult time doing his own individual tax return, Form 1040. I'm not joking. This is what President Reagan said. Back then, there wasn't H&R Block. I've been doing taxes for many years, but I never bothered to find out the history of taxes in this country. But now that I have researched this information, I would like to share with you. The word tax dates back to the 14th century. It is derived from the Latin word taxare, which means to assess. Now, income taxes was created in 1861 during the Civil War, and tax was a mechanism to fund the war efforts. Abraham Lincoln and the Congress imposed a 3% tax on all incomes over $800. Imagine 3%. Don't you wish we had that rate now?
Yeah.
But of course, no, we can't survive in $800 of income. Income tax is very old, but right now there are many other taxes like property tax, sales tax, gas tax, revenue tax, just to name a few. But today I'm going to focus on sales tax. It is not an exaggeration to say most people in the US have paid sales tax at some point in their life. From school kids who have never seen an income tax return, or tax protesters who have never filed who don't like to file a return, all of them have paid sales tax on the purchases. Let me give you the origin of sales tax. It is not as old as the income taxes. It was born during the Great Depression. You got that right. It is as young as, less than 100 years old. Now, before that, they did have tax and tariffs, like the tea tax. And that's how the Boston Tea Party came about. But the sales tax that we know now is not so old. The first state to establish or start the sales tax was West Virginia back in 1921. Now, what is sales tax? It's a tax on retail goods and taxable services. It's a tax collected by the seller. Now, there are 5 states that don't have the sales taxes, and that's New Hampshire, Oregon, Montana, Alaska, and Delaware. Let me tell you the difference between sales tax and use tax. So these 5 states where there's no sales tax, right? Delaware is close by. you decide to travel to Delaware and buy a laptop there. Laptop is taxable in New Jersey. So because you go to a shop in Delaware, they don't charge you any sales tax. Does that mean you can get away with it? Legally, you're supposed to report the tax on it on your state income tax return. Let me focus on taxes in New Jersey because I think most of us live in this state, and given the interest of time, I can't be possibly covering all the 45 states. The tax rate of New Jersey, sales tax rate, is 6.625%. Used to be 7% for a long time, but fortunately this year, to compensate for the increase in gas tax, they reduced it. But there are certain zones in New Jersey, they are eligible for the urban enterprise zone exemption. So therefore, the tax rate is 50% off. One such zone I would like to mention is Elizabeth. That's where the Garden State Mall and IKEA is. So furniture that's taxable, if you go to IKEA, you can pay a half, 3.3125% sales tax. By the way, IKEA has not paid me for, marketing this. One interesting thing I would like to tell you. Last week, our Toastmaster Carmen, who works with me in my company, she went to buy bagels, and she told the deli to have half the bagels, like whole bagels, and other half she asked them to cut it. And when she looked at the bill, there was a sales tax charged on the bagels that were cut into two. So, just keep that in mind, that the same thing the taxability could change depending on, how it's done. Another example, our president, Marianne, she goes to Texas very often for business trips. Now, Marianne, hot sandwiches in Texas are taxable, but frozen sandwiches are exempt. Now, the same frozen sandwich, if you go to a convenience store and use their in-store microwave and warm it up, it is still exempt. But if you ask the storekeeper to warm it up, it becomes taxable. I'm sorry. The taxes are very, very complicated, and they vary from state to state. But I would like to say one thing. All the best things in life are free, plus the inevitable taxes, of course. And don't try to beat the game. If you earn something, it will be minus the tax. If you buy something, it will be plus the tax. Didn't I say the tax was inevitable? Thank you.